Hi, I'm Julie Thompson. Welcome to the Plymouth School Committee candidate interview. I want to take a moment to thank our candidate for participating in this interview and collaborating with PAC TV to bring this informational programming to residents and voters this election season. Let me explain the format. We will be conducting a one-on-one interview-style Q&A format with each candidate lasting about 30 minutes. Responses will not be timed, and follow-up questions may be asked during this format. We aim to ask up to about 4 to 5 questions, but that will depend on the length of responses, along with any follow-up discussion during this exchange. Candidates will be allowed to address anything not covered or that they'd like to add clarification to at the end of the interview in their closing remarks. So let's get started. Today we're speaking with Jim Sorensen, one of the 3 candidates for school committee in the Plymouth town election. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to get right into the questions, and we're going to start the timer. And here we go. Maintenance and upkeep of town buildings is always an issue, especially with the age of the elementary and middle schools in town. Maintenance and redistricting are the primary reasons that the closing of the Hedge Elementary School is up for consideration. Can you weigh in on this debate?
Sure. Well, let me say this. First of all, the school committee hasn't yet sat in a workshop session. Boy, that's hard to say. To discuss the details of this redistricting and hedge. Okay, so we have to still do that. But I can tell you that after the presentation at the previous meeting from all of the residents quite a few of the residents, I'm really thinking hard about whether or not this school should be closed.
Okay.
I'm beginning to think that, almost from what I heard the other night, I'm beginning to think, now I still have a lot of research to do, but at this juncture, I'm beginning to think that it's almost like having an automobile and taking the, North Plymouth is the automobile and Hedge is the motor. I don't want to take the motor out of the vehicle. Otherwise, it just sits there as a shell. So I'm really beginning to think this thing through now, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting whereby we can sort of discuss this in detail.
Okay. What about the cost, though, for the upkeep of that particular school, which is, I believe, 110 years old?
Right. I think that's 100, and so is Nathaniel Morton. They're both just a year apart from each other. One is 1910, the other is 1911 or 12. So they're both built at the same time, and both of them have a lot of expenses. And on top of that, as soon as we put X amount of dollars into a building, the ADA kicks in.
Sure.
So now we have to make all those things. So this is a real consideration.
Exactly.
So I'm thinking that it's probably going to end up meaning that we will probably need a new elementary school.
A new one.
A new one at some point down the road. And I'm sort of hoping we can hold where we are until we can do that study and get approval for it.
Okay. What to you would be the absolute deciding factor on if you'll support closing it versus trying to spend some money and keep it open?
It's hard to take a complicated topic and come up with an absolute one point. Okay?
True.
So therefore, that's a really difficult question to answer.
Okay.
But I want to tell you that without question, I was moved by the presentations last Monday night.
Okay.
There were tears in people's eyes. As I said a few moments ago, it appears to me that Hedge School is a center of a community that's been here for well over 100 years.
Right, right. And because your elementary schools are they're kind of defined by the area of the town that they're in, you grow up knowing that that's your neighborhood school. And
and it's a walking school, so that even tells you more. Everybody walks to that school, so they see each other every day, and they pass each other every day. It's not like a bunch of buses pulled in.
Right. So it's a different environment.
A whole different environment.
Okay. So more to come.
More to
you need
come.
more information. Yep. Okay. Each year, the district is asked to keep its budget increase to a minimal amount. Yet, when it presents a level service budget, the increase always seems to be more than a minimal amount. Can you explain what a level service budget is, and why the budget continues to increase when the school population seems to be decreasing?
Okay, I hear another unfortunate, complicated answer to a simple question.
Okay.
It is true that the school-age population has been decreasing over the last maybe 5 or 6 years. But the requirements of education are increasing.
Okay.
I mean, just look at the technology that we have to have now. Back in the day, you gave out a bunch of textbooks. We don't give out textbooks anymore.
Yep.
We give out Chromebooks. So education is becoming more and more expensive, even though the numbers are down. The programs are different. we have to offer programs that we wouldn't have considered. I've been around a long time that we wouldn't have considered 20 years ago. Now, the premise in the question, your first half of your question was, the town gives us X amount of dollars, gives us a recommendation to stay within, and then you said something like, but you always go over that. That's not true. We don't always go over that.
Okay.
We live within that.
Okay.
In fact, there are times when we have surplus money that we give back to the town.
Okay. So let me just give you an example. You were asked to keep it to a 0.7% increase for FY23, and it came in just over 3%. So it was more than the 0.7 they asked you to do as an increase.
Perhaps.
Okay.
I mean, I think it gets more complicated. With the budget came in at 0.7. All right. If I remember this correctly, the budget we wrote the budget to 0.7.
Okay.
There were other expenses that came along after that have to be included.
Okay. Now, can you talk about funded and unfunded mandates? Because so many people don't understand what is that and why is it such an important part of your budget?
Okay, I'll give you one. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Act.
Okay.
For a while, it was unfunded. What does that mean? That means that the town of Plymouth has a responsibility to educate a homeless child in the town that they came from. So if we have a homeless child living in Plymouth, and homeless could be with relatives, doesn't necessarily mean, but their hometown is Kingston.
Yep.
We have to transport them to Kingston. Or Brockton. In fact, we've had Brockton. We've had some kids living here and we have to transport them. Now, that was underfunded. The town of Plymouth had to pick that up. That's an underfunded mandate.
Okay.
However, in the last couple of years, that has gotten funded.
Okay.
So it very often happens that some sort of federal regulation or state regulation is laid upon us that we have to provide and we have to pay for, and then a couple of years later, finally, the funding follows.
The funding comes through. But you've already ended up spending.
But we've
a lot
already
of money.
spent 2 or 3 years of an underfunded mandate.
Okay. What about MCAS?
What about MCAS?
Do you have to? Is that an unfunded mandate, or is that a funded mandate? That you have to have the MCAS test?
I don't know the answer to that question. I can't imagine that there's, the state gives. Yes, this is the answer to that question. The state provides support for the town of Plymouth as all of its towns, X amount of dollars we get. They used to call it the cherry sheet because the paper was red in color. So costs for MCAS are in that those funds we get from the state.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain of that.
Okay.
I would not say it's unfunded.
Okay. And what about English language learning, ELL? I know that that's, especially in Plymouth, there's a lot of people that English is not their first language.
What about it?
Is that something that the town has to?
Yes, that's part of our budget. Let's just say it again. Okay. We develop the budget for EEL, for MCAS, for all these other things. We develop the budget, like X amount of dollars that the town of Plymouth has to pay for.
Okay.
But the state also recognizes our expenses.
Okay.
And that's how they send us the support from the state, Chapter 70 money.
Right. And for the case of like ELL, you don't know how many. I mean, you can estimate, but you're not absolutely sure how many students throughout the year are going to require those services, or are you?
No, you can't be sure. Because
so that's always
in fact,
a variable.
Just the other night, we heard we had 3 more children moved into the district who don't speak English. And we're in April.
Yeah.
And they just moved in.
Okay. Okay. So that obviously affects the budget. Right. Now, another item that comes out is out-of-district services. Now, why would students be sent out of this district? For what are some of the different reasons?
No, there's tons of reasons. If we have a blind student, we don't have services for blind students.
Okay.
So we have to send them to a school where blind children are educated.
Okay.
But taking away from a handicap, if we have a student that wants to do animal husbandry at the high school level, we don't offer an animal husbandry program. So we have to pay the tuition for that child to go to a school that has that particular career choice in it. We don't have to pay for their transportation, but we have to pay for their tuition.
So anything that any kid wants to learn or study about, it's your responsibility to then find them the nearest school system that has that?
That's correct.
And pay the tuition for it?
That's correct.
Does every town do that?
Every town has to. That's regulated by the state.
I had no idea that happened. Okay. So those things, the unfunded mandates and the out-of-district services are things that you have to do, and there's really not a lot you can do about controlling the cost of that.
On when we have a handicapped child, and a child could go to a very expensive school because that's the only school that can provide the services for this particular child. Now, a chunk of that money gets reimbursed through special education in the Commonwealth.
Okay.
So we do get some of that back.
But sometimes you don't get any back.
No, we don't get it all back.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Wow. Question number 3.
Oh, I thought we had 3 questions. Huh? Just joking. I thought we were through 3 questions.
No. With the increasing costs of attending colleges, many students are looking to join the trades or go into certificate or licensing programs instead. Plymouth has a very strong tech studies program at both high schools, which are so popular that not all the students who apply are accepted into these programs. How can the districts accommodate or support students who are really interested in the trades if they're not accepted?
Well, I guess you have to look at the reason why a child would not be accepted. There's a waiting list.
Okay.
And let's say we have a child who wants to go into a program in ninth grade, but we check their attendance in 8th grade and we find out that they didn't come to school a quarter of the year because for whatever reason they didn't come to school.
Okay.
Now we can't give that seat with such a demand for that seat to somebody who's not going to come to school for a quarter of the year.
Okay.
So we encourage our 8th graders, if you want to apply for the VOC program, get good grades, come to school, don't get suspended, be a good student.
Yep.
And that moves you up, that keeps you up on the list.
But the fact that there's a list
means
that there's not unlimited.
There's exactly. Nothing's unlimited when there's dollars attached to it.
Right. So what keeps a kid from saying, I really want to have this program, and they have a really great one over in that town? You need to send me over there because you can't support me here.
Oh, we don't have to do that. If we offer the program, we put the child on a waiting list. We say to the child, all right, you didn't quite make it because your attendance or your grades or your discipline, but let's have a good 9th grade.
Yeah.
If we get an opening, you can apply for it.
Okay.
Does it happen that a child really wants it and never gets in? Probably.
And how do you feel about that?
It's terrible, but we only have so many resources.
Right.
And only so many programs.
And if you constantly have a waiting list in a certain program, is there any way to expand that particular program?
That's a question. That's a really good question. And, I don't teach those classes.
Right.
Oh, I better not touch that microphone.
Yeah.
I don't teach those classes.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to say to the automotive teacher, can you take 5 more? He's going to say, wait a minute, look, I only got this much room. They have to answer those questions.
Sure.
We can't mandate that.
Okay. All right, I get it. I would think there's probably a think tank way of coming up with maybe different shifts in the schools, where morning, who knows, right?
I'm sure that our educators do that.
Yeah, yeah. Because Plymouth is the envy of an awful lot of...
It is.
I mean,
We have
what's offered in the Plymouth school system is absolutely uncanny.
Right.
It's amazing.
And I got to tell you, when I got on the committee, it wasn't like that.
How long have you been on?
30-something years.
Oh, wow. But and you've seen huge...
Yes. When we wanted to build the first vocational school here in Plymouth, we had to convince members of the town that it's not a reform school. They thought vocational schools were reform schools.
Yeah.
Or
for the kids that just couldn't make it.
Couldn't make it.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And that's just completely opposite nowadays. I mean,
completely opposite.
Right. And there's a lot of kids that smartly are not choosing the college route because it doesn't make any sense.
Some of the colleges are pricing themselves out of the market.
Also, yes, that is very true. Okay. Question 4. The district is in the process of hiring a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator. Why is this position needed at this point, and what do you see as the outcome of having a person in this role?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let me say this to you, that the school committee, our job is to serve the students of Plymouth.
Yep.
We want our students to come to school, to feel safe in our schools, to feel appreciated in our schools. We want them to come to schools with a good attitude. But more than that, we want them to go home happy, right? We want them to go home happy and smarter. That's our goal.
Okay.
So if they leave school on the end of a Monday or Tuesday and they smile about their day, we've done a good job. 84% of our schools, 84% of Plymouth is white, majority, 16% is minority. 16% of 7,000 students is over 1,000 students. So those 1,000 students need to come to school and go home and be happy. And if they're underserved, or if they're discriminated against, or if they're not celebrated because they're different, then we've failed them.
Okay.
So we have to address all of our students, not just the majority.
Okay.
So this DEI person, and I was a very strong proponent of bringing somebody in who could sort of spearhead the inclusion, whereby nobody's discriminated against. Everybody feels celebrated. And this person would be able to mitigate when a problem does occur, whereby somebody's rights were violated because of their cultural background or their gender or their status. This person's job would be to mitigate that and solve the problem.
Okay. Why do you think that this position is seen as controversial by so many? Not so many, but by
I
some.
think it's considered controversial because people don't understand it. Some people perhaps think that we are forcing some minority to be more valued than some other group, and that's not what we're doing. I think people don't understand it. That's why, and I think our job as school committee members is to educate as much as we can of what this is all about. But it's about equal rights, and it's about inclusion and celebration, and it's about feeling that as a student, as I'm a parent, that my child, even though my child's in the minority, my child is getting what every other child is getting. That's really what this is all about.
Right. It's leveling the playing field for all students.
It is.
No matter
well
what
said.
they're.
I should have said that.
Well, that's basically what you did
Yeah.
say. It's leveling the playing field so that everybody has the same opportunities and is treated with the same respect.
Right. Right.
Okay, question number 5. One of the roles of the school committee is to approve major adoption or revision of curriculum and textbooks upon recommendation of the superintendent. Can you explain how the district sets its curriculum, what standards you follow for each department, and how often does this come in front of the school committee?
Okay. One of the things that makes Plymouth a really great school system is we have curriculum coordinators. All right.
Okay.
We have one in math, one in social studies, one in English, and what am I missing? Then there's the fourth one: math, social studies, English,
Foreign language?
and foreign
Science?
language. Science.
Okay.
That's the one.
Yeah.
These are experts.
Okay.
These are the experts on curriculum.
Okay.
I trust them. And if they bring a recommendation to us for a program, and we just went through this fall. So the science program sort of has changed its approach. The curriculum coordinator comes before the school committee and explained the whole new approach in science that we're adapting across the school system. And in a way convinced us that this is state of the art.
Okay.
This is best practice.
Okay.
I trust these guys
Okay.
and women.
Can you give me an example of what it was and what they're suggesting it is?
Let's just, I said I've been around a long time. How did we used to teach? We used to have a textbook, and the teacher would teach a concept in the textbook, and then the kids would read the concept in the textbook and sort of report back that I've learned it.
And be tested on it.
We're not teaching that way anymore.
Okay.
What we're just doing in the science is now we present the children with a problem, and we don't give them any guidance. They have their Chromebook, they have their textbooks,
Yep.
they have each other. And so the teacher doesn't give guidance anymore until we get sort of the end of the lesson. Then the teacher finds the part of the lesson that the kids didn't quite get to,
Right.
and they learn through that sort of critical thinking.
Right.
That's the big change.
So it's collaborative critical thinking that you're teaching these kids
With
to utilize.
resources.
With the necessary resources. Right. Instead of just memorize this and give it back to me.
Right.
Let's use your brain, and
Right.
here's all your resources that you can use. Is there another example of how curriculum changes? And why are you unique that you have curriculum coordinators?
Yes. I don't know of another system that has curriculum coordinators.
And how do they vet what they're going to suggest to the school committee? Like
how do I know their job is what you're asking.
Yeah,
me.
like
Well, what do they do all day
science
long?
is a really good
Right.
example because that field changes daily.
I would say in science, our coordinator meets with the Board of Education people who develop curriculum for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and there's a lot of dialogue going back
Sure.
and forth, and research comes in from the universities
Yeah.
on how students learn today. Students learn differently today because they've grown up with these things.
Yeah.
So our coordinators meet with the experts,
Yeah.
bring that back, and then bring it to us, and we adopt it.
Right. So as far as the curriculum for other than, the 3 R's, as we used to say in the olden days, what about like the life skills curriculums? Balance a checkbook, read a map.
The map is a funny issue because
I mean,
I agree with you on that one.
Right. Those simple life skills that if everybody had to lose their
Right.
devices for a week,
Yeah.
how would they communicate?
Right,
How would they
yeah.
find things out? No
Well,
Google.
I'll say 2 things on that. One is that we do. I don't know. I couldn't name the course, but we do have life skills woven into some of our courses. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
It may not be the AP courses. It may be sort of the courses a little bit further down the list where that's woven into it. I love the comment about a map because I really believe kids don't know how to read a map because they can Google it
That's right.
and bring up the
Yeah.
that might be a lost art.
Okay. All right. It might be, might not be. But also, the kids today, you need to develop curriculum that's going to help them get jobs in the workforce tomorrow and the day after and the day after. So how do you adapt your curriculum to the job market or post-secondary education and then the job market that they're going to go into? Because there's certain things that are just archaic now and people will never use. And there's certain industries like coding, for example, which it's been said that people that know how to code are going to have jobs 10 years from now, a lot of jobs. Security, people that can go into that, cybersecurity are going to have a lot of jobs. So I guess the question is how do you kind of have your crystal ball and say, how do we adapt curriculum today with where we think the jobs will be?
Yeah, I think now you're getting into higher education questions like that. At secondary level, we have to create thinkers, right? We have to create thinkers, people who can take the data in front of them and manipulate the data, and rearrange the data so that a new variable can be formed. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We can't prepare them to be computer technicians,
Right.
Nor can we prepare them to be a bank teller, other than to help them to learn how to think.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do with our changes in the curriculum. We're trying to create. I mean, I spoke in China, with Japan, on this very topic a bunch of years ago, because the Chinese wanted to educate the way we educate. They wanted to make their students into thinkers, not followers. We're doing a good job at that.
And that example you gave about how you're just adjusting the way you're teaching the science, you're literally creating the thinkers.
Right.
Not the people that can memorize, but the
Right.
people that can...
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fascinating. Are there any things that you want to talk about as far as being on the school committee that I haven't asked you about? Are there any issues that you think is important for people to know?
I think that I would always encourage people to not believe what Facebook says.
Okay.
Things happen in schools sometimes, and somebody takes a small fact and runs with it, and then somebody else takes that same fact and runs with it again and embellishes it, and before you know it, the incident that's out there in social media isn't even close to the incident that occurred in the school. So I would say it is very important for people to call school committee members, call central office. If before you draw a conclusion about whatever it is you heard, let's get the facts.
Now, does the Plymouth Public Schools has a wonderful website. Now, do they also have a social media where they could officially,
Yes.
counterpoint
Yes.
things that are said? And that's
Yes.
really where it should be done.
Right.
It shouldn't be
We
done on
post that.
individual
Right. We
pages.
try to get
you
all
do,
that stuff out.
You do post that.
Yes.
Okay. And this Plymouth Schools is a huge district.
Yes, it is.
what are some of the advantages and disadvantages for being a school committee member on a district that's this big and complex?
Well, I won't say it's a disadvantage, but I think that, as I said to you earlier, we serve the children of Plymouth. That's our job, to serve the children no matter where they live in the town. So when a group of people in the town need attention, we have to give that attention to whatever the issue happens to be at the time. That's the best I can say. It's a big town, and it's hard, and it's complex, and the town's very different depending on where you are, but we serve it all.
And how
And we
often
should.
do you have to meet? And how often do you meet on an emergency basis versus a regularly scheduled meeting?
We meet twice a month, almost regularly every month, and then there are times when, during the pandemic, we were meeting every week.
Right, right.
And then there are times, some during budget season, we'll meet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday
Yep.
of a week, plus our regular meetings.
Right.
School committee, people think school committee is two meetings a month. It's not.
I'm sure it's not. And I'm sure you get calls at home.
Calls and emails, and
Yeah.
sure, lots of it.
And what, you brought up the pandemic and how things changed during that. What was your biggest takeaway of what you learned about the Plymouth Public Schools during the pandemic?
Flexibility. I was quite impressed when we realized back in March of 2020 that we were probably going to have to close the schools, and our curriculum coordinators and our administrators and our lead teachers put together an online program that was just amazing. And they put it out there within a month.
Yeah.
That was quite amazing.
For that many students, it's
Yeah.
almost uncanny that
Right.
they pulled that one off.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and there's two other people being as candidates for this position, and there's so there's three
people,
candidates and
two
two seats.
Right.
So, in your last couple of minutes, why do you think you're one of the people that should be reelected?
That's another good question. Well, let me say this about, I've been on a lot of school committees. I've been doing this for this is probably going to be 33 years. The only time when my wife got ill, and then I was off, and then she passed, and after she passed, I came back on the committee. So I was off for maybe 3 or 4 years in the middle of that. What I see about being on these committees, a school committee needs to be balanced. It needs to have new people with new ideas and new energy, and to bring that to the table. But it also needs veterans, because I know the pitfalls. I know the system. I sort of know where the system needs to go. So I'm a good candidate to bring the history to the table whenever we have a difficult discussion.
Because you can draw on the years that you've had. Yeah.
I have the experience.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
so
welcome.
much. All right, we thank Jim for participating in this interview, and we wish you the best of luck throughout your campaign and in the election. For our viewers, thank you for joining us. If you're interested in watching replays of this interview, please visit our website, pactv.org/elections, for replay times and online viewing options, including PAC TV's on-demand and streaming service, PAC TV Prime. And please make your choices heard by voting in the election on Saturday, May 21st. Thank you, and good day.